What's up, everyone? How are you doing? I'm Swanky Games, and today I want to discuss a form of gameplay that not many people seem to discuss, or that not many have covered, if anyone has at all, for Hwoarang specifically. And I do believe that it is something, despite being quite a bit stronger in Tekken 8, it still tends to get swept under the rug. To which I am referring to Hwoarang's neutral game. So sit back, relax, enjoy a nice cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and let's discuss neutral. And if you're feeling especially generous or enjoy this video, or by chance learn something from this, consider liking and subscribing. The more that you do, the more it helps me, and the more you guys help me, the more I'll try to help you guys out. Also, a huge shout out to you guys over in my comments with the last few videos. The engagement has been amazing. Please keep them coming with your ideas, thoughts, and opinions. I really enjoy learning your guys' perspective on these topics and getting your guys' input. And lastly, if you guys would like to talk to me on more of a personal level, or you guys want some good games, maybe some personal guidance to help improve on learning, or you guys just want to simply meet some amazing and friendly Tekken players, consider heading on over to my Discord. Shout out to you guys over there. And I'm sure that they would be more than eager to play with you guys, help you guys learn with you in a lot of situations. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's topic. All right, so before we get into Hwoarang's neutral, let's first go over what neutral is in a nutshell. And to further help some players understand what exactly I'm referring to, in a lot of other fighting games, this is what is referred to as footsies. It's the state of play most notable at the beginning of a match or a round, like round one start. Or typically after a combo, maybe in the middle of a match. It's typically the situation where neither party really has any advantage or disadvantage necessarily. And you typically would use this tactic to try and slowly whittle away at your opponent's health while you get a better feel for their play style, such as their tendencies is a big one. Especially at the beginning of a fight, you don't really know anything about your opponent's play style, and it usually pays off to play slow and safe while you're trying to figure them out. At first, then this can be difficult to do and to learn, and more often than not, people tend to lose their patience and they start going hard to pick up the pace. But against an experienced player, that could be the mistake that costs you the round or the match. So the moves that you'd want to throw out in the neutral typically are usually going to be the moves that should have as little to no risk as possible, while giving you anywhere between a decent reward and more favorable rewards. I have kind of broken these down into 5 categories, which we'll talk about in a moment, but that's typically how neutral is going to be played. So keep that stuff in mind as we're moving forward. All right, so getting into the first category, which is going to be range. Depending on the situation, you're going to want a move or two that can be used from both very close and very far away. For example, Hwoarang's down forward 2. It's not typically a move you want to use if there's really any space between you and your opponent due to its lack of range. However, a move like forward 4 is amazing for its reach alone. So where on paper down forward 2 would be a worse move than forward 4. That's only referring to the range. So, you know, down forward 2, arguably being one of Hwoarang's best tools, its probably biggest weakness is already in a category in and of itself. So it might be something to be aware of. So that's kind of where the range comes from. Category 2 is going to be your tracking. It's not a secret that Tekken is a 3D fighting game best known for its movement-based gameplay. This also includes side movement. Hwoarang's biggest weakness is his linearity. So you're going to need ways to mitigate that weakness. The two moves here I would like to refer to is right foot forward, down forward 3, and the before mentioned forward 4. These are both two of Hwoarang's main like heat engagers, and I figured in this particular situation with range, down forward 2 lost and forward 4 won. But in this particular situation, obviously, the down forward 3 from right foot forward is going to win because it's a homing move in and of itself, and it has the same range as forward 4 as well, if not better in certain situations. So that's why I wanted to kind of compare the two. And it's balanced out based on the fact that forward 4 is extremely linear. So in this case, obviously, forward 4 would lose when you compare the two. So if you're going up against a player who is sidestepping a lot, or you're up against a player who just likes to sidewalk, which sadly is actually a decent counterplay versus Hwoarang. Like, even in my ranks, there will be people that I'm fighting and we'll be about right here, and they'll just be sidewalking. They won't be like trying to time anything or anything. They'll just be sidewalking. So it's nice to know that you have options that at least track to certain sides, like running 4 tracks towards Hwoarang's back, where sidestep 4 can catch people going towards his stomach, and so stuff like that. However, as I was mentioning before, forward 4 is probably going to be like your worst move in this instance, and then down forward 3 from right foot forward is a homing move. So even if they teleported to the side, you're going to hit them. So in this instance, right foot forward, down forward 3 would be the optimal choice. So our third category is going to be start frames. So this is kind of pretty much what it sounds like. How long does it take for a move to come out, to make contact with your opponent? When it comes to start frames, you don't typically want moves that take more than, I would say, maybe 18 frames at best to come out. And even then, like an 18 frame move, it'd be better if it was a mid rather than a high. Anything that takes longer than that needs to be at least able to cover multiple categories to be worth the risk of probably getting punched out and to lose the advantage that you would gain. For example, a move like 4-3 would be a great tool to cover this, as it's an 11 frame startup, so it's not it's very hard to interrupt. But then a move like 4-4-3 that on paper only takes about 20 frames to come out, but with the input included is more like 22, 23 frames, which means you're more likely to get hit out of it, especially if you're right in your opponent's face, potentially up to 2 times before it even comes out once. So that's stuff to keep in mind when it comes to the start frames. And we'll get into stuff like that. So like a move like down forward 4 that comes out of 16 frames is a fantastic move, especially because it's a mid. A move like 4-3, also a fantastic move because it comes out 11 frames. But like a move like forward 4-3, running 3, even running 4, probably wouldn't be recommended because even though on paper, like the running 4 is 18 frames, because it's a running move, it actually takes longer overall to get it to come out. Even at the best, it might take about 23 frames to fully come out. So stuff like that to keep in mind. Category 4 is going to be your block frames. So whereas Category 3 was startup frames, Category 4 is block frames. It's after it makes contact and it's potentially blocked. What situation are you in? There's about 5 main things to keep in mind when you're throwing out a move and to consider, which is advantage, which is anything that's plus on block, neutral, which is anything that's plus or minus 0 on block, which means you have no advantage or disadvantage in that situation. And then the third one is minus but safe. So this is moves that are anywhere between -1 to -9 on block. Usually, there are a couple exemptions, but we're not going to worry about those today. Then there's the minor punishable moves. These are moves that are typically going to be -10 to -14. Again, that's usually the case. That's not always going to be the case. And then finally, major punishable moves. So these are going to be moves that are -15 or more, which usually means that they're going to be launch punishable on block. For example, covering all of these, I guess, subcategories, 4-4-3 is going to be +6 on block. So that's going to be plus frames on block. That's what I want. Another move is going to be like left flamingo stance, back 4-3 is going to be neutral on block. There's no advantage or disadvantage in that situation. A move like 4-3, which is -6 on block. So it's still very safe. So there's that. Up 4-3 plus 4-4 is -10 on block. And finally, back 3 is -19 on block. So in this instance, a 4-4-3 would probably be the best overall option in this category. However, I would say all the moves until they're punishable are still quote unquote abusable tools, since they on paper result in no actual risk after being blocked. So 4-4-3, left flamingo stance, back 4-3, and 4-3 by itself are going to be really, really good tools. However, the last two options that are punishable and launch punishable are probably not going to be ideal to just throw out unless you are fully confident they'll at least hit, which more often than not, you can't truly be sure unless you react to a whiff or something of that nature. Category 5 is going to be your multi-hit strings. Most, if not all, characters have multi-hit strings, whether they're natural on hit or some characters may have 2-hit strings, while others have between 3 to 5 hit strings. For example, Hwoarang's 3-3 strings. He has a cancelable version with 3-3 forward. Then he has 2 mid versions with 3-3-3 and 3-3-2. And then he has 2 different high versions, which is 3-3-4 and 3-3 forward 4. So it's up to you. It's up to you as the player to decide which of these versions to use in any situation. And if you think your opponent may mash, then you wouldn't want to cancel the mid, part way. However, then you have to decide if you think that they might try and duck the third attack or not. The mids are all punishable at either -11 or -14. Or they're all highs, which means that they can potentially be ducked and punished. So since you're kind of stuck in a risk-reward scenario where you don't get much reward any which way, but could end up in a situation where you could potentially be launched in certain situations, as a neutral tool, you may want to avoid this move altogether. But then you also have a similar situation with 1, 2, forward 3 and 1, 2, forward 4, where yes, the high is still duckable and launch punishable if they duck it, but the mid is not punishable at all. So it could be worth at least throwing out the mid version to more or less knowledge check your opponent, while also not leaving much risk to yourself in the process. And then the last one is category 6, the no block stances. So this is like for characters like Hwoarang, Ling Xiaoyu, Zafina, characters like that where they have a stance where they go into and they kind of stay in those stances, even for a couple seconds. Like Lars, he wouldn't necessarily stay in those stances, but he does kind of get stuck in that stance long enough to where he has to either commit to something or he could be launch punished for just kind of sitting there. So those would be kind of examples. So this is referring to moves where, regardless of your advantage or disadvantage, where your opponent might block, you're kind of stuck in a stance where you have to commit to something. Otherwise, you're probably going to get hit, which is pretty much what I was saying before. So how a move such as like Wave Dash 3 would be a great tool on paper because it's -4 on block. I'm still in a situation where I don't hit another button before they do. I'll for sure get hit. And then I have to know my best, safest options to get out of these situations, to which they could still duck my highs or lows or interrupt my mids, since they're all either too slow, or like if I were to go for like the power crush, they could potentially just wait it out and punish the few good options I do actually have, and ends up kind of beating all the options I have where I was in a situation where I really didn't have a choice. A better option that I might go for is wall standing 4-4. I pointed this one out because it, just like with crouch dash 3, you could do this out of a crouch dash as well. And also this is a mid that's completely safe on block. And the stance that it puts me in is a stance that I can fully block in. And until you have a pretty good understanding of your opponent's game plan and you think you know how to capitalize, you should try to avoid moves that put you in stances altogether, in my opinion. Outside of like maybe some knowledge check situations, but overall, I would still more or less just try to avoid it. And so that's going to be, like I said, those are going to be your main categories for neutral. The last one, as I mentioned, is just going to be more or less depending on the characters. Like, you wouldn't do the 6th category with Kazuya because his only real stance is wave dash, and you can cancel that at any time and block. So it wouldn't be important for him to be able to do that, and so on, and other characters of that nature. So, all right. So now let's go over what I consider to be Hwoarang's best neutral tools. I capped this out at about 10 just to keep things fairly simple and easy. Some of you guys might already use some of these tools. Some of you might use most of these tools. However, this is more for people that maybe only use a few tools, or don't really use any of these tools, or just don't know how to use neutral tools in general. I can't really teach you how to use neutral tools. I can give you the tools to work with, and then you kind of just gotta go from there. My suggestion would be like go into quick matches so you don't really have like much pressure to win, because if you lose it don't mean anything, and just practice playing in the neutral. Just do nothing but neutral, and I'm sure it'll click eventually, as long as you're actually like trying and learning. But these top 10 are going to be what I consider to be the most abusable, usable tools that you can use. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first move is going to be 2 forward 3. I think this is a bonkers tool that not a lot of Hwoarang players do use. It's not amazing. You don't get anything out of it, but it is a nice little 1-2 check that ends in a mid that is completely safe at -8. Very, very good. You also have 1-2 forward 3. I don't think it's as good, but it's still there to help keep your opponents honest if they try to duck the third attack. Very, very good. And honestly, when it comes to these attacks, I would always do either 1-2 forward 3 or 2 forward 3, just because if they duck it, who cares? If they block it, who cares? If they do duck it, you get a little bit of damage out of it. But if they don't, you're at least not in a bad situation either way. So very, very good. The next move is going to be 4-3. In my opinion, this is probably one of Hwoarang's top 5 moves, period. I'm not going to get into the details on why, but I do think this is a bonkers move that more Hwoarang players need to abuse more. I do see Hwoarang players use it pretty often. I just think that some other players tend to forget that this move even really exists in certain situations. But this move is really, really good. It's a high mid. If you hold forward after you hit 3, it will cancel into left flamingo. And the frame data does not change whether you cancel or not, which is really, really nice. A lot of situations, if you cancel the attack, you actually end up in minus frames, even if you hit before, or you might actually be in plus frames or something of that nature. But in this particular case, it's always going to be the same. So as soon as you hear or see that it got blocked or it hit, you have to commit to something if you do decide to cancel it. But in my opinion, more often than not, unless you're punishing something, it's best and safest to just do the move. And then what's even cooler about this is that the mid knocks back on counter. It doesn't seem like a big deal until your opponent's back's to the wall, and then they try to challenge a move like this, and then you get essentially a full combo damage because they try to duck punch you, pretty much. So very, very good. The next move is going to be forward 1+2, the push hands. I love this move. It's 15 frames to come out. It's got decent range. It doesn't have very good tracking. It does have some tracking, but it's not fantastic. And it does have at least deceptively good range, which is why I like it. And on hit, it's +2. On block, it's -9, so it's still safe. And on counter hit, you get a free follow-up up to 14 frames, which means essentially a full a heat engager. So very, very good. The next move is going to be down forward 2. This is your alternative to forward 1+2. So if your opponent's in your face, you're pretty confident they're not going to try to sidestep you. You're in an advantageous situation, say after forward 4-3, then maybe you throw out down forward 2 just to see what happens. And with down forward 2, the range is crap and it has very little to no tracking whatsoever. However, it is 15 frame safe mid at -7. And you can get, now most people, when they get a down forward 2, like Paul or somebody of that nature, even with good execution, they're probably going to get maybe high 60s without using resources. So that's no walls, no floor breaks, no stage hazards of any kind, no heat, no rage, just unadulterated damage out in the open. They can typically get about mid to high 60s. And more often than not, that usually is with some execution. And that's even with Kazuya. He has essentially a 14 frame launcher, and he can get some ridiculous damage, but it takes a lot of execution. However, with Hwoarang, he has an easy 15 frame launcher, and if you know what you're doing, you can get some pretty good damage. You can usually make it about 70 to 73, or sometimes even more, sometimes a little less. But without using much resources, without much execution on my part, I was able to manage about, mid-low 70s and also get some kind of an advantage off of it as well. So very, very nice. You know, so a move like down forward 2 would be really, really good, just to kind of throw out. And you'll have a lot of people like overseas Hwoarang players. They'll be like out here just throwing out down forward 2. And, you know, you'd be thinking, why would you do that? Well, if you're going to ask that, you might as well ask why Paul players do it. Because this is also something that a lot of Paul players will do. Or Leo or Lee is another one. They'll just be out here throwing out down forward 2s. And then, you know, they throw out like a second one or a third one. And the opponent ends up running straight into it. And that's the idea. So very solid tool in and of itself. Again, just poor range, poor tracking. Next move is going to be down forward 4. 16 frame homing move, +8 on a hit, -8 on block, and it knocks down on counter hit. Very solid tool. Honestly, at my ranks, I've been kind of going back and forth between Tekken King and Tekken Emperor. And this move right here has been quite the godsend. I think I kind of touched up on it a little bit before, but a brief recap. A lot of situations I'll be like, you know, we'll be about this distance, you know, trying to figure out who's gonna, you know, advance forward and who's gonna, you know, stay patient. And a lot of times, like as a Hwoarang player, we're probably gonna lose our patience a little bit faster than most people would because we want to press buttons. So the opponent will just be over here, just sidewalking, not even sidestepping, just sidewalking. Because as much as it sucks, that works against Hwoarang. So you need something to mitigate it. Down forward 4 by itself is a really good tool to keep them honest. Does 20 damage. And like I said, it's only -8, and it knocks down on counter hit, which is all, or knocks back on counter, which is very solid. And it really is a nice way to kind of keep your opponents honest. But your next move is going to be down back 3. I think that between down forward 4 and down back 3, the two moves in tandem with each other are really, really amazing tools to keep your opponent honest and get into their heads. I love this move. I know, as you can see, it's -1 on hit, which is meh. On block, it's -13, which is not ideal against characters like Kazuya or Eddie. But against pretty much everybody else, the most they're going to get is like a wall rising 4. So for the most part, this doesn't pose much of a risk. And then like if you hit from way back here, then their wall rising 1s are going to miss even at 13 frames. So even then, it comes down to where you place the move. And then on counter hit, you get a guaranteed +17. Nothing's guaranteed. But it is nice to have a situation where they have to take the mix-up if they decided to push buttons. And doing 12 damage is not bad either. You know, it's enough damage to add up if your opponent decides that they're not threatened by it. You throw it out a few times, and that damage starts to add up pretty quick. So, very, very good tool. Next move is going to be forward 2. This is the move that I never knew I needed until pretty much the ranks I'm at now. I always heard like casual, high-level Hwoarang players say how good of a move this is. And when you're like me and you kind of just feel it out, forward 2 doesn't really feel like a move to use. But when you start actually like disciplining yourself to really use this tool, and you learn to use it right, this move is amazing. It really, really is. It's only -2 on block. You have 2 different versions, from left flamingo stance 2 and right flamingo stance 1. Same frame data, -2 on block, +9 on hit, which is really what you're going for. And aside from right flamingo stance 1, these will put you in right foot forward or left foot forward, so you'll at least block, be able to block afterwards or set up. Very, very good tool. The next move is going to be while standing 4-4. This is a godsend as well. Like, I'm going to say this about a lot of moves, But while staying 4/4 has always been an amazing tool. It hits grounded, at least the second hit hits grounded. It's +4 on hit, +5, or -5, my fault, on block. The one by itself is +8 on hit and -3 on block. So you can always kind of pick and choose which one you want to go for. It's very, very good. It's a nice little mid check. It doesn't get you anything spectacular, but it's a mid check. Keep your opponent honest. Get you +4 if it does hit. Very, very good. And so our last move, out of left foot forward is going to be sidestep 4. This move is kind of ridiculous in and of itself. There's a few characters that have moves that are just about this good, like Claudio or Paul. But I do think Hwoarang does have a very good sidestep low. I think this has really slipped under the radar because of Hwoarang's playstyle as a whole. But I do think this is like an amazing tool. It's got decent range. It's got deceptively good range. And it's +5 on hit, -13 on block. So not too bad as long as you're not going up against Kazuya or Eddie. And on counter hit, you get a free launch. Oh, my bad. You get some pretty good damage just from that as well. And they're usually fairly consistent. You just gotta know what to do. But for the most part, they're all usually pretty easy. And even if you don't get it on counter hit, it's +5. So, you know, you do this, it hits, and then they try to challenge your plus frames, and this forces crouch as well. So the only thing they're really going to be able to challenge you with that would also trade is a crouch jab. Otherwise, anything else, this is going to beat. You're going to go after a down forward 2, and then you're going to launch them forward for trying to challenge those plus frames as well. I don't know, like I said, I don't know the plus frames for the other characters, but it is fairly rare to have a move that's counter hit tool and +5 on hit. Usually those moves are not a one package deal, so I'm definitely not going to complain about it. So very, very good. And then our last tool is actually going to be a right foot forward move. And I'm sure everybody who's played Hwoarang or knows Hwoarang saw this move coming from a mile away. Got to save the best for last. Is going to be right foot forward, down forward 3. This move is bonkers. And the only weakness to this move is that it's 22 frames to come out. That's it. Period. And I do consider this to be Hwoarang's #1 move. And I really hope the devs leave this crap alone. Don't get me wrong, there are some players out there that absolutely despise Hwoarang for having this move. 100%. However, I do feel that they should still leave it alone just because Hwoarang's not winning any tournaments. And you have characters like Dragunov or Steve or Paul with all these super abusable moves that nobody's complaining about, but because Hwoarang has this, nobody wants him to have it. And I get why. I just don't. It's a move that every Hwoarang player wanted. Like, we didn't know that we wanted this move particularly, but this move essentially answers every Hwoarang player's problem in a nutshell. As long as you don't abuse it. You can't abuse it. Again, it is 22 frames to come out. So if you abuse it too much, you can be jabbed out of it for a mini combo. However, this does everything. It's a heat engager, it's homing, it low crushes, it hits from across screen, it's +1 on block. Did I mention it's a mid homing move? Heat engager. It's everything. It has everything you need out of a move. And what's more, a lot of people may not have realized this, But if you're at like tip range, oh, my bad. This is actually 23 frames. Let me see if I can get this. 23 frames. It has to be at tip range, so it's not super easy to do. But if you can get it, it actually leaves you at +2, which is really nice. So, you know, there's that very rare situation where you can get that. And then even if it does hit, it don't really matter because then you're put in a +17 situation. So very, very good. Very, very solid. But that's going to be his 10 main neutral tools. In a nutshell, that, like I said, they all kind of cover Hwoarang's weaknesses in their own ways, while also being able to optimize your risk reward without putting you in much risk and getting something of a reward. And there are going to be some situations where, you know, it takes a whole match to be able to figure out what your opponent's trying to do or their play style, because, you know, maybe they're a little bit more patient than you, so they're able to play footsies longer than you. They're not losing their patience as much. But overall, if you find yourself losing and, you know, pressure's not cutting it, these are moves to try to throw out to see if you can catch your opponent off guard. And, you know, stay compact. Don't go into stances. And so on and so on. I do want to go over a few honorable mentions. I just have 6 here. The first one's going to be back 4. This is the only move in the entirety of my quote-unquote neutral tools that is punishable. It is a 13 frame high that is -10 on block, and but it's a 13 frame counter hit tool, and in my opinion, counter hits really haven't been stronger in any game before this, especially with them taking Magic 4s away. Counter hits just have never been more valuable, and Hwoarang does have a lot of counter hits, but this is his easiest to access, his fastest one by a mile outside of back 3 from right foot forward, which is the same properties. And, you know, on counter hit, you get a free launch, pretty solid launch if you know what you're doing, and so on and so on. So very, very solid. And because it's a quick move like that, more people often than not can't react in time to punish it properly. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. The next move is going to be forward 3. This move is +6 on block or hit. The difference is on a hit, they'll be forced to crouch, whereas on block, they'll just kind of be, you know, pushed back. Aside from that, this move is bonkers. It does have a little bit of tracking to Hwoarang's back, which is really, really nice. It covers a little bit of his linearity weakness problem. So very, very nice. And it puts you in right foot forward. Really, really solid to end up in that situation. Your next honorable mention is going to be forward 4. As I mentioned before, this has bonkers range. And the only downside to this move is that it's super linear. But aside from that, if you can check your opponent enough times to keep them from sidestepping you, this really is a good neutral tool. If you're trying to get in and apply pressure, this is a terrible move. But if you're just trying to use this as a neutral tool to just get into your opponent's face and see what happens, this still is a good move. It's a fantastic move, and it's a heat engager. And it breaks walls and stuff. So it's very, very good in that aspect. Like I said, it pretty much comes down to just keeping your opponent from pushing buttons. And I believe it's -7 on block, so it's still safe. It's a mid, very, very solid. This move is a move that, to this day, I have not seen another Hwoarang player actually use. I'm not saying that Hwoarang players aren't out there using it, but since Tekken 8 has released, I have not seen a single person use this move. And that is wall standing 3+4-3. I do get that it is a little on the slow side. And it might be sidesteppable or sidewalkable. I'm not really sure. But I do believe this has quite a bit of tracking to both sides. As you can see, very good tracking to both sides. So if your opponent's just mindlessly sidewalking like they normally like to do against Hwoarang, you just throw this out and you get a free, what was it, 36 damage? And what's more is the second attack on counter hit will knock down. Kazuya, put your hand away. You can still get about the same damage or potentially more if you're fast enough to get a forward 3. Next move is going to be your right foot forward, back 2. This is an amazing tool. 16 frames to come out, +4 on block, +6 on hit. On counter hit, this will knock down for some guaranteed damage. The only downside of this move is that it is linear, and there's not really a good way to set this up. It's really hard to consider any of Hwoarang's right foot forward moves primary linear or primary neutral tools. You know, down 4-3 being the exception because it's just way too good not to mention. It's probably his #1 move in my opinion, but that's a topic for a different day. But right foot forward back 2 is probably a good second in right foot forward as far as a neutral tool, even as a pressure tool for that matter. 16 frames to come out is not bad. It's mid, +6, like I said, +6 on hit, +4 on block. So depending on your opponent, you could find yourself in like a loop situation if they're not careful. The last honorable mention is going to be right foot forward, forward 3. That's 22 frames to come out, and I believe is -7 on block. Depending on the situation, it might go down a little bit, like to like -4 maybe, or -6. But otherwise, either way, it's still very, very safe. So, and if it does hit, it knocks down for some guaranteed damage. So you can't go wrong with the extra damage. And that's pretty much it for his key neutral tools and honorable mentions. A quick recap for his neutral tools is 2 forward 3, 4-3, forward 1+2, down forward 2, down forward 4, down back 3, forward 2, while standing 4-4, sidestep 4, and right foot forward, down forward 3. Those are going to be your top 10 neutral tools. And then your honorable mentions, we're going to be back 4, forward 3, forward 4, while standing 3+4-3, right foot forward, back 2, and right foot forward 3. And those are going to be all your best neutral tools, in my opinion. If you guys don't agree with me, or you guys feel like there is a better neutral tool out there, or you think one of my neutral tools are crap in comparison to like another tool, please let me know in the comments. I love to hear you guys' opinions or perspective, and I would definitely consider checking out whatever moves you guys are feeling to see if it really works out better or not. Definitely something to keep in mind. A few final points that I wanted to bring to light that are specific for Hwoarang for the most part is the first one is don't forget that he does have generic 10 frame jabs. You can also do a 2 jab from right foot forward that is actually +2 on block and has extensions such as 2-1-1 and 2-4-4. So definitely stuff to keep in mind. to kind of stay compact. If you find yourself in right foot forward and you just want to jab, these are options. You can also hit forward 1, and you can get yourself +1 and get back in a left foot forward if you prefer that. Definitely options. Moves such as down forward 1, down forward 2, forward 1+2, and down back 3 can all be done from both left foot forward and right foot forward. So though there are 4 neutral tools that you will always have access to so long as both your feet are planted on the ground. Also remember, he has a full grab game. You should attempt throws once every blue moon. He has a 1 break, a 2 break, and a 1+2 break. He actually has multiple 1+2 breaks. But you should definitely be attempting throws once every blue moon, because most players can't break throws on reaction. And the ones that do react don't typically react to the actual throw. They can react to being thrown and tend to just have like a default panic button. So if, say, you attempt a 2 break throw and they break it, try throwing out a 1 break and see if they break it. If they don't, then there's actually a fair chance that they're just panic pressing and they're not actually reacting. Which means that even though they can't react to being thrown, it's still worth trying to throw them out. Plus, there are situations where they might try to throw out like a heat engager, or they might do a power crush that's -12 or worse, and then you got a free throw in those situations, and in a lot of situations of that nature. Also, keep in mind Hwoarang has really good running moves. Forward 4 or running 3 is very linear and a little on the slow side, but it is +6 on block. So very, very good. And to mitigate how linear it is, you also have running 4, which from right in your opponent's face, running 4 is still going to miss. But like from back here, it will catch a lot of sidesteppers and sidewalkers. So, as long as you use it properly, even running 4 becomes a very valuable tool when trying to get in and keep your opponent honest from sidestepping. The downside being that it is a high instead of a mid, but it leaves you in back turn. But it's to your advantage at +5, so not too bad. And I think that's gonna be about it as far as Hwoarang's neutral game and his tools and stuff like that. So I do want to thank you guys for watching, and I do hope this helped you guys out in any way. I apologize if I rambled a little bit, if I messed up a few too many times. I do apologize. I do stutter a little bit. I apologize. But I do still appreciate you guys stopping by and watching my stuff. But aside from that, like I said, I think I'm going to go ahead and hop off. So I will see you guys in the next stream or video. Take care of yourselves. Happy gaming. Thank you again for stopping by, and peace.